What was it about your either your natural gifts or your experience as a childhood, things that had happened to you that made you the type of person that could box and also run triathlons? Because I've you're in a unique category of your own with that.
Well, quite simply put, my father was a fucking slave driver.
Really.
And, you know, if you want to get fit, swing an axe for 8 hours straight. My father was not the kind of guy that took excuses. I
Mm,
mean, I would have blisters on my hands, covering the whole palms of my hands, and he wouldn't care. My dad rule was if you're not vomiting or bleeding to death, shut the fuck up and get busy.
mm.
And I mean, we would lift 120 pound hay bales for hours on end. We'd bring in 3,000 bales of hay, and this would go on. I used to laugh because I'd bring my buddies out who thought they were badass weightlifters and bodybuilders and martial artists. And my dad said, if you want to get some of your tough friends to come over, we'll see what they're made of. And during hay season, I mean, these guys, they wouldn't even last 20 minutes and they were just on the ground crying for mama. But like my sister, Barbara, who's 6 months older than me, she could hammer these guys.
Really.
Yeah, no problem. And so, we were a 142 acre sheep farm, cows. We milked our own cows. We had 120 sheep. We had a woolen factory. We grew our own produce. We sold produce. We sold firewood. We had about 70 acres of virgin timber. So we cut our own wood for making things and building things. And my dad had his own sawmill. I mean, my father used to be a special effects man for Universal Studios, and he had a lot of different skills. And aside from being violent, he was a very, very skilled human being.
Mm,
So interesting guy to be around because I learned a lot of stuff.
mm.
And, between digging post holes and cleaning shit out of barns and managing hay and gardening and, like this is like full on, every day. And my father's rule was you don't eat or drink anything until those animals are taken care of. And if I ever catch you, it'll only happen one time.
Wow.
And
That's not the line you want to cross.
no, so what happened was as I developed a real passion, I just think I had a passion for sports early. I started wrestling when I was in the first grade, and then I wasn't really a person that liked school at all,
Mm,
but I felt like I could really be myself athletically. It's where I got to really express myself.
mm.
So I gravitated towards sports because it was kind of like the medicine that I could take for the pain of having to sit in a desk and learn stuff that didn't interest me.
Right.
And so, I found that my father had conditioned us to such a high level through the work on the farm that most of my friends I thought were pussies, except for the guys that I told you about. Every
Yeah.
now and then you run across a stud,
Yeah.
But I mean, when I was like, I think I was like 10th grade, I was probably 5'6", 140 pounds, and I was repping out with 225 in the bench. I'd be doing like 30 chin-ups straight. And before I joined the Army, I ran a mile in 4:38.
Jeez.
I set the 82nd Airborne Division record for the most push-ups in 2 minutes at 144. I set 2 military records for the obstacle and confidence course, which is, you know what that is, where you run trails and you have to deal with things like swinging logs and inverted walls
yeah.
and cargo nets and ropes. And so I held 2 military records. I've never gone to check to see if they stand, but I shattered one by like 30 seconds.
Wow.
So I became quite famous in the Army because I was winning competitions from 10Ks and 5Ks to military competitions of all different sorts to being a boxer. So that's how I got fit.
Mm.
I got fit because I was raised by somebody that made drill sergeants look like pussies. In fact, one time in the 82nd, when I was when I was in basic training, one of the drill sergeants was being real rude and getting in my face and pushing on me and, doing all this stuff they do. And he realized that I was not afraid of him.
Hmm.
And he goes, Chek, he says, you're staring me down like you're a badass. And so he started coming after me, like trying to get me mad. That's what they try to do. They try to piss you off. So if you lose your composure, then they can punish you. And in jump school, they want to get you to lose your composure because then they can get rid of you. Because they're trying to get rid of anybody that's a problem that won't follow orders.
Hmm.
And one day he did this again in the barracks, but it just so happened that I had to come back to get something out of the barracks and all the other guys were outside, and he started getting up in my face again. And I looked him right in the eye and I said, Sergeant Baumgartner, you would not last one day on the farm with my father. I was raised with a man that would eat you for lunch. You've got nothing that scares me. I was raised by a grizzly bear. So hit me with your best shot. I said, anytime you want to close the doors in here and see what happens when me and you go at it, I'm ready for you.
Was he afraid?
No. He just thought I was crazy.
Yeah.
But what happened, what was kind of funny as a side story, he challenged everybody in our platoon, whoever can get a first-time go on end-of-cycle testing, because at the end of basic training, you have to do 30 tests. And if you fail, you get one more chance. And then you have to get recycled, which would be terrible to have to go through basic training twice. And it's a competition, and it's all scored. So every platoon's competing against every other platoon. So they, your shooting scores, your fitness scores, and then your test scores. So he said, whoever can max out these scores and get a first-time go on all your tests, I will feed in bed, and you can choose anything you want from the officer's mess. And I knew right there I had him. And I said to him, I'm going to win. And he looked at me and laughed. He said, yeah, right. You think you're going to win, Mr. Farm Boy? I said, you're going to serve me in bed. Because and he served you in bed. And I won. I shot as an expert. I maxed out the physical fitness test, and I got a first-time go on all 30 tests.
Oh, my gosh.
And so the whole platoon cracked up laughing because him and all these other drill sergeants were riding me because, I would, to irritate them when everybody else was exhausted and on the ground crying, I'd do single arm push-ups with my rucksack on, and I would just work my right arm till it was cooked. I came from a hardcore athletic development, so like I got out of shape and gained weight in basic training. I'm like, I thought this was all the tough guys. These guys are pussies, man.
You were on vacation.
I was on vacation. And so when they saw me doing this stuff, then they would just try to push me harder and harder and try to break me, but they couldn't break me. So it was just funny. As a side note, I got served. I'm probably one of the few people that ever went through basic training in the military that got served breakfast in bed from the officer's mess.
That's unbelievable. One of the best stories I've ever heard told on the podcast right there.
Well, it's very true. And I've probably got 30 letters from generals from all over the military, from all my competitions and Army accommodation medals. I broke a lot of records in the military, and I got a lot of awards and generals writing me letters because it was obvious that when I became the trainer of the Army boxing team, something radical happened.
Yeah.
And just to show you something very interesting, in 1988, in the 1988 Olympics, to get onto the Olympic team, you got to fight your way on. Of the U.S. Olympic boxing team, 11 of the fighters came from my boxing team.
Wow.
They were all guys that I trained.
That's incredible.
I don't think anyone's ever done that in history.
How does that make you feel as the person who trained them?
It gave me the confidence that listening to my intuition and trusting my body to guide me, let me know that my body was a laboratory that I could trust, and that what I learned through my own experience of healing my own injuries and training myself for athletic competitions, because I always seem weird to everybody, but I won a lot.
Yeah.
I realized that there was no better compass than your inner compass. And if you really listen to your body, it'll always guide you. And that's how I became successful, not only as an athlete, but as a therapist.